A member of the Blood Street Gang was indicted today for shooting a man inside a Long Island IHOP.
You've heard of street gangs, but what if the real power players aren't just on the streets? They run empires. These organizations rake in billions, influence politics, and run global networks so vast, it's hard to trace.
MS-13 is particularly violent. They don't like shooting people because it's too quick, it's too fast.
From elusive warlords to hidden crime empires, this is organized crime on a whole new level. Stay glued to your screen till the end, because number 3 will make you question everything you thought you knew about global security. Let's dive in. Number 17, a brotherhood born in blood. In March 2022, a wave of terror swept El Salvador as gang violence claimed 87 lives in a single weekend, marking a pivotal moment in El Salvador's war against gang violence. President Nayib Bukele's administration declared a state of emergency, and this raised the question: who could carry out such a calculated act in broad daylight? The answer leads us back to 1980s Los Angeles, where a group of Salvadoran immigrants fleeing civil war formed a close-knit gang for protection. What started as a defense against street violence soon morphed into something far more dangerous. In the 90s, mass deportations sent many of them back to Central America, straight into regions already steeped in poverty and corruption. That's where the transformation began. Today, this group, MS-13, has grown into an international threat. In the US, their operations span from running drug pipelines into major cities to pressuring local businesses through extortion. Abroad, they've been linked to migrant smuggling rings and attacks that left entire communities shaken. In Honduras alone, coordinated strikes in early 2024 left over 20 dead. Their connection with the Mexican mafia amplifies their reach, helping them move drugs and reinforce their control. Tattoos that once symbolized unity now mark territory and spark fear. With roughly 10,000 members in the US and about 70,000 worldwide, their grip stretches across borders and into the shadows of global crime. In February 2025, the US officially labeled them a foreign terrorist group. El Salvador's government has jailed thousands in a sweeping crackdown,
as they seek to clean the MS-13 and Barrio 18 gangs out of neighborhoods they've ruled for decades.
but the gang continues to adapt, surviving every attempt to break their hold. Number 16, the Syndicate that welcomes all. In late 2023, something strange happened in Guatemala City. Buses stopped running, shops shut their doors, and the streets emptied, not because of protests or politics, but because of one anonymous phone call. That's how much power this syndicate holds. Unlike most gangs formed in the chaos of the 60s in Los Angeles, this group broke the mold. While others drew strict racial lines, they opened their ranks to everyone. That one decision helped them grow fast and wide. But when mass deportations in the 1990s sent many members back to Central America, what began in LA quickly turned into a sprawling web of crime across Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. By 2025, their numbers swelled to somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000. They run extortion rackets that pressure local economies through extortion, traffic drugs straight into North America, and carry out contract hits with alarming efficiency. In Honduras, their 2024 clashes with police reached a terrifying new level, featuring military-style explosives. They're smart, too. Partnering with the Mexican mafia has boosted their drug operations and helped them funnel cash into a growing international network. Their setup, split into smaller, semi-independent groups called cliques, makes them flexible and hard to stop. Every time law enforcement cracks down in one city, another cell keeps operating elsewhere. In 2025, the US officially labeled them a foreign terrorist organization. Even so, they're still expanding. Arrests in New York in 2024 showed just how far their reach goes, right into the heart of major US cities. Known as the 18th Street Syndicate, they've turned inclusivity into influence, and influence into fear. This is Barrio 18, and they're only getting bolder. Number 15, the gang that turned a prison into a resort. Few gangs in modern history have ever turned a prison into a kingdom. But deep in Venezuela, one group didn't just take control of a prison, they turned it into a fully functioning base of operations, complete with its own zoo, nightclub, and swimming pool. This isn't fiction. It's the story of Tren de Aragua, a gang that transformed Tocaron prison into their version of a 5-star headquarters. What started in the early 2010s as a small group tied to a failed railway project quickly evolved into a criminal powerhouse under the command of Niño Guerrero, a fugitive so elusive the U.S. has placed a $5 million bounty on his head. By 2014, the gang had taken complete control of the prison, using it to direct crimes that reached far beyond Venezuela's borders. Their empire includes human trafficking networks that prey on migrants, drug smuggling routes feeding cocaine and fentanyl into North America, and extortion rackets that operate in at least 8 countries. Their presence has even reached U.S. soil. In 2024, authorities in cities like New York, Miami, and Denver launched over 100 investigations linked to the gang. One of the most disturbing moments came when a video surfaced from an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado, showing armed men breaking into homes, with terrified families caught in the chaos. Alliances with powerful groups like Brazil's Primeiro Comando da Capital have only fueled their rise. Despite a Venezuelan government raid on Tocaron in 2023, the gang didn't vanish. Their cells scattered, spreading influence across borders and embedding themselves in migrant communities. Number 14. Soldiers turned narco-kings. In 2010, deep in the deserts of Tamaulipas, Mexico, investigators stumbled upon a haunting scene: 72 migrants buried together in a remote grave. It wasn't just a tragedy, it was a signature, one left by a cartel that doesn't operate in shadows. It marches with military precision. This group didn't start as street criminals. In the late 1990s, they were Mexican special forces, elite soldiers trained in advanced combat. But when some of them walked away from their uniforms and into cartel life, everything changed. They first served as enforcers for one of Mexico's top drug lords. But power, as always, demands more. By 2010, they broke off to form their own empire. At their height, they held influence across 17 Mexican states. Their edge? Discipline? Their structure? Modeled after the military they once swore to serve. That's what made them different and dangerous. Their criminal portfolio is vast. They run international drug routes supplying hard drugs. They exploit migrant populations through human trafficking. And they've siphoned millions from Mexico's oil pipelines, choking the nation's energy sector in the process. Even in 2024, gun battles with rivals in Tamaulipas proved they haven't abandoned their roots, using battlefield tactics and modern weaponry to hold ground. Today, their estimated 5,000 members may be fewer than before, but they're far from gone. High-profile arrests in 2025 fractured leadership, but offshoots still operate, spreading fear in familiar territory. Once branded the most technologically advanced cartel by the U.S., the Los Zetas Syndicate remains a symbol of how military skill, when twisted, can build an empire of chaos. Number 13. The Syndicate, that rules from behind bars. One of the most feared gangs in the Western Hemisphere doesn't operate from street corners or hideouts. It runs its empire from the inside of prison cells. And when it wants to send a message, entire cities like São Paulo pay the price. This is Primeiro Comando da Capital, or PCC, a syndicate so embedded in Brazil's underworld that it once brought São Paulo to a standstill with coordinated attacks that left 5 officers dead. Their top brass, still behind bars. But make no mistake, they're calling every shot. It all began in 1993 inside Taubaté prison. A group of 8 inmates, outraged by the Carandiru massacre that killed over 100 prisoners the year before, banded together. What started as a call for justice evolved into a criminal machine under the command of Marcos Williams Herbas Camacho, better known as Marcola. His influence runs so deep that even from a high-security facility, he squashes rival factions and dictates orders across continents. PCC's operations are massive. They control over half of Brazil's hard drug exports to Europe and wash their money through hotels, football clubs, and online gambling. Their fingerprints were all over a March 2024 kidnapping in Chile, and a São Paulo hotel network bust revealed just how embedded they are in legitimate business. Backed by global allies like Italy's Ndrangheta and Venezuela's Tren de Aragua, the PCC's reach now spans 24 countries. Even after a government crackdown in 2024, their grip on the streets remains firm, with an estimated 40,000 full members and another 60,000 contract members. And with an operation this vast still being orchestrated from behind bars, it's clear the PCC isn't going anywhere anytime soon. If you're finding this deep dive eye-opening, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more than you think. Number 12. The cult that haunts Kenya's streets. A so-called prayer gathering in a quiet Nairobi neighborhood ended in gunfire and panic when residents burst in, expecting worship, and instead found animal sacrifices and chants straight out of a horror film. That moment wasn't just a shock, it was a wake-up call that Mungiki, Kenya's most feared cult-turned-crime syndicate, is far from dead. Their story goes back to the late 1980s, when a group of young Kikuyu men in the Rift Valley sought to revive traditional customs to push back against land disputes, rising unemployment, and political exclusion. At first, it looked like a cultural revival, but it quickly spiraled into something far more alarming. By the 1990s, Mungiki had embedded itself deep into Nairobi's slums, using violence and intimidation to control territory and the people living in it. They set up illegal utilities, charging poor residents for electricity and water they didn't own. Minibus drivers were extorted for daily protection fees, and those who tried to leave, many ended up dead. In 2024, police disrupted an oathing ceremony in Nyandarua, arresting 11 members and seizing ritual items, while previous crackdowns had already exposed how deeply they prey on Kenya's most vulnerable, especially the youth. The group's reach wasn't just in the streets. Political connections shielded them for years, with reports as recently as 2024 linking Mungiki to rival camps of Kenya's deputy president, turning criminal muscle into political leverage. Though their numbers have dropped from 100,000 at their peak to around 10,000 today, Mungiki remains a dangerous force, blending ethnic identity, cultural loyalty, and brutal enforcement. Number 11. Masters of the digital underworld. In early 2024, over $50 million vanished from European bank accounts in a matter of seconds. No masked robbers, no getaway cars, just a clean sweep, executed from behind a screen. This wasn't the work of amateurs. It was the calling card of one of the most sophisticated criminal syndicates in the world. The Solntsevskaya Brotherhood was born from the rubble of the Soviet Union in the late 1980s. Its founder, a former waiter turned underworld tactician, recruited a network of ex-convicts, jobless youth, and ex-KGB operatives, building a criminal empire from Moscow's Sontsevo district. By the 90s, they had locked down key transport routes and controlled much of the car import trade, using both brains and brute force. But their power didn't stop at borders, or even physical territory. Today, they specialize in high-end cybercrime. From international wire fraud and cryptocurrency scams to drug smuggling and global arms dealing, their operations are as diverse as they are dangerous. In 2025, an Interpol-led crackdown tied them to a massive crypto fraud scheme that drained millions from investors across Europe. Proof that they've mastered both traditional crime and digital warfare. Their reach extends into legitimate business too. Moscow casinos, luxury real estate, and construction firms double as money laundering machines, helping them hide their profits while gaining influence. With an estimated 5,000 to 10,000 members across 50 countries, they operate in the shadows, backed by political connections and a structure that resists collapse even under pressure. This is the Solntsevskaya Brotherhood, Russia's modern mafia, and the silent force behind some of the world's boldest cybercrimes. Number 10. The cartel that sparked a civil war. Entire neighborhoods in Culiacan were turned into ghost towns as military trucks rolled in and gunfire echoed through the streets. Over 500 lives were lost, 200 people simply disappeared, and the city's pulse stopped cold. But this wasn't an invasion from a foreign enemy. It was a civil war, sparked by one of Mexico's most powerful cartels turning on itself. Born from the ashes of the Guadalajara cartel in the late 1980s, this group found its stronghold in Mexico's Golden Triangle, a region ripe for growing marijuana and poppies. What began as a regional trafficking operation soon exploded into an international empire, led by infamous figures like Joaquin El Chapo Guzman and Ismael El Mayo Zambada. They pioneered underground smuggling tunnels into the U.S., moving massive quantities of drugs undetected. Today, their operations stretch far beyond Mexico, flooding global markets with hard drugs. In December 2024, authorities made the largest fentanyl seizure in history, 1,500 kilograms, all traced back to this syndicate. That same year, Spanish police uncovered meth labs in Barcelona tied to their laundering networks, which quietly funneled drug money through hotels and car dealerships. But everything changed in July 2024. The arrests of Zambada and one of El Chapo's sons in El Paso cracked open a bitter internal rivalry. Zambada's loyalists and the faction known as Los Chapitos began a ruthless turf war, unleashing chaos that forced Mexico to deploy over 11,000 soldiers to contain the bloodshed. By April 2025, Sinaloa's economy had lost 14,000 jobs and billions in revenue. Yet despite U.S. terrorist designations and international pressure, the cartel remains dangerously intact. This isn't just drug trafficking, it's the Sinaloa cartel, a fractured giant with global power and a hometown still reeling from its fury. Number 9. The prison syndicate that rules with fear. The most terrifying thing about this group isn't just what they've done on the streets, it's what they've managed to orchestrate from inside prison cells, locked away in solitary confinement, stripped of freedom, yet still able to call for blood. That's the level of power the Aryan Brotherhood wields. Born in 1964 at California's San Quentin State Prison, this group didn't start as a full-blown criminal empire. It began with a handful of Irish-American inmates pushing back against racial integration. But over the years, it grew into a national syndicate, blending white supremacist ideology with a cold, calculated business model. By 1980, a three-man commission took charge, laying the groundwork for a ruthless hierarchy that still controls thousands today. At the heart of their operations is drug trafficking, mostly distributed through networks controlled from inside prison walls. Smuggled phones allow incarcerated leaders to run deals stretching from California's prison yards to cities as far as Anchorage. But it doesn't stop there. Contract killings, extortion rackets, and illegal gambling rack up millions while reinforcing the gang's dominance. Loyalty isn't optional. New members take a blood-in, blood-out oath, meaning the only way in is through violence, and the only way out is death. Even as federal crackdowns led to dozens of convictions in 2024, including 69 members tied to drug rings and murder plots, the gang's command structure held firm. In one shocking case, 3 inmates were found guilty in 2025 for coordinating 5 murders across Los Angeles County, all while serving time. The Aryan Brotherhood's grip isn't loosening. Despite tighter surveillance and fresh sanctions, they remain a living example of how far fear and control can stretch, even behind bars. Number 8. Drone lords of Mexico's underworld. In 2024, the world watched in disbelief as a police station in Michoacán was reduced to rubble, not by gunfire or grenades, but by a fleet of drones rigged with explosives. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a clear message. One cartel had taken warfare to the skies. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG, isn't just another drug-running operation. Born in 2009 from the remains of the Milenio Cartel, they were led by a former Mexican police officer who flipped the script, using insider knowledge to build a network that now spans continents. By 2025, his elusiveness had earned him a $15 million bounty from the U.S., a sign of just how dangerous and untouchable he's become. CJNG made its name by challenging the Sinaloa cartel and seizing key smuggling routes across 24 of Mexico's 32 states. Their operations are as brutal as they are advanced. Fentanyl and meth pipelines into the U.S., extortion rings that bleed local businesses dry, and human smuggling routes that prey on desperation. In March 2024, they crippled western Mexico with coordinated highway blockades, torching vehicles, and engaging in shootouts that left entire regions frozen in fear. What truly sets them apart is their firepower. Beyond automatic weapons and rocket launchers, their growing use of drones has changed the face of cartel violence. One of their most infamous attacks, an ambush that killed 15 officers in 2015, was just the beginning. They've expanded beyond Latin America, building links in Europe and Asia. In early 2025, the U.S. labeled them a terrorist organization, and not without reason. By February, a discovery in Teuchitlan revealed their darkest secret, a ranch used to forcibly recruit young fighters, surrounded by shallow graves. Number 7. The mafia that owns the shadows. They don't fire guns in public or spray graffiti to mark their turf, but their fingerprints are all over Europe's drug routes, construction sites, and even clean energy contracts. When authorities across Germany, Italy, and Bulgaria seized millions in assets and arrested dozens in 2024, they weren't just cracking down on a local crime ring. They were peeling back the curtain on one of the world's most silent and sophisticated mafias. Rooted in the remote, mountainous region of Calabria in southern Italy, this syndicate began in the 1860s as a band of rural enforcers. Over the decades, it evolved into a global confederation of more than 100 blood-bound clans, known as Indrine. Tightly organized through family and marriage, their structure isn't just tradition, it's strategy. This decentralized model has made them nearly impossible to dismantle, even as they spread into over 40 countries using Calabrian diaspora communities as their launchpads. Today, they control a staggering 80% of Europe's drug supply, pulling in an estimated $60 billion each year. Their tentacles stretch deep into construction, waste management, even eco-friendly industries, any sector that can clean their money. In 2024 alone, law enforcement discovered partnerships with Brazil's PCC cartel and caught them smuggling contraband tobacco into Canada through Native American trade routes. They've also crept into political corridors, with a former Italian lawmaker convicted in 2023 for helping shield their operations. And despite major arrests, like fugitive Edgardo Greco's capture and over 100 members taken down by Interpol in early 2025, their global footprint hasn't faded. It's the 'Ndrangheta, a criminal network that thrives by staying unseen and unheard. If that gave you chills, imagine how many others have no idea this is happening right under their noses. Share this with a friend who needs to know what's really going on behind the scenes. Number 6. The terror that ravages the Sahel. Back in 2002, armed insurgents stormed a quiet farming village in Borno State, killing more than 40 unarmed farmers in broad daylight. The world was forced to confront a bitter truth. This wasn't a battlefield. It was just another ordinary day in a region where terror has become routine. The group responsible has spent over 2 decades turning the Sahel into one of the world's most volatile hotspots. Boko Haram began in 2002, founded by Mohammed Yusuf in the northeastern city of Maiduguri. What started as a radical rejection of Western education and culture soon spiraled into a full-scale insurgency. After Yusuf died in police custody in 2009, Abubakar Shekau took over, steering the movement into a campaign of extreme violence. By 2016, Boko Haram had splintered, with one of its factions aligning with the Islamic State under the banner of ISWAP, sparking deadly turf wars in the region. Their attacks are relentless, from suicide bombings and kidnappings to massacres in schools, churches, and markets. Their reach stretches across Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and Mali. In 2024 alone, Boko Haram abducted nearly 600 people. Just months earlier, 128 villagers were killed in Yobe, and in April 2025, roadside bombs claimed 26 more lives. The group is believed to generate over $200 million annually through ransoms, extortion, and looting, funding a crisis that's displaced more than 2 million people. Despite large-scale military efforts, including the multinational Joint Task Force's Operation Lake Sanity 2 in 2024, and the surrender of over 100,000 fighters since 2021, the group remains embedded in the region. Their blend of extremist ideology and ruthless tactics continues to destabilize Nigeria and West Africa at large. Number 5. The gang that rules Rio's favelas. When a shootout turns an entire neighborhood into a war zone, you know it's more than just street crime. In Rio de Janeiro's Complexo do Alemão, chaos erupted when dozens of gunmen, armed with military-grade weapons, faced off with police, leaving officers injured and the city stunned. This wasn't just a gang fight. It was a demonstration of Red Command's raw power. Born inside the brutal walls of Ilha Grande prison in the 1970s, Red Command began as a pact between thieves and political prisoners. What started as survival behind bars evolved into a revolutionary force that seized control of Rio's poorest neighborhoods. By the 1980s, under leaders like Rogério Lemgruber, the group had already built a drug empire and turned favelas into heavily fortified outposts. Today, their reach extends far beyond Brazil. They're funneling drugs to Europe and Africa, collecting extortion from local businesses, and controlling pirated electricity, gas, and internet across over 40% of Rio's favelas. A 2024 bust in São Paulo uncovered $5 million in drugs linked to their maritime routes. Their long-standing turf war with rival gang PCC has claimed countless lives. With roughly 10,000 members, ranging from lookouts to enforcers, they've built smuggling pipelines that move over 10 tons of drugs each month, often with help from Paraguayan networks. Even after the 2023 capture of top leader Luiz Antonio da Silva, known as Zinho, their decentralized structure has kept operations running. But in the favelas, where jobs are scarce and institutions fail, this gang still offers something the government often can't: order, protection, and power. That's why they're more than a criminal group. They're Rio's silent rulers. Number 4. The cartel that shapes Japan's underworld. When 3 high-ranking mobsters stepped into a police station in Kobe and handed over a letter vowing to end a violent feud that had fractured Japan's criminal underworld for over a decade, it wasn't just a peace offering, it was a power move. No single gesture in recent years has shifted the balance of Japan's gang dynamics quite like this one, and only one group could pull it off: the Yamaguchi-gumi. Founded in 1915 out of Kobe's dockworker unions by Harukichi Yamaguchi, this organization has evolved into the largest and most influential Yakuza syndicate in Japan. Under the iron-fisted leadership of Kazuo Taoka in the 1960s, the group cemented its dominance, spreading across all 47 prefectures and building transnational networks stretching from Southeast Asia to Hawaii. Their empire is built on more than just fear. From drug trafficking and extortion to gambling rings, prostitution, and shady real estate deals, the Yamaguchi-gumi pulls in billions every year. Despite police crackdowns and a decline in membership, from 14,100 in 2015 to about 6,900 in 2024, the group's structure remains rock solid. Boss Kenichi Shinoda, better known as Shinobu Tsukasa, and his right-hand man, Kiyoshi Takayama, continue to run the operation with military-like precision. Even after a 2015 splinter group formed the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi, which now barely numbers 120, the parent group remains unshaken. U.S. sanctions have hit their finances, and Japanese law has limited their public movements. But the Yamaguchi-gumi still stands at the top of Japan's underworld. Number 3. The global terror that resurges in chaos. On New Year's Day, a man drove a truck straight into the heart of New Orleans' Bourbon Street, killing 15 people and waving a black flag with chilling familiarity. It wasn't just a random act of violence. It was a brutal reminder that the Islamic State, once thought to be on the brink of collapse, still knows how to strike fear. loud, deadly, and in full view of the world. This jihadist group rose from the ashes of al-Qaeda in Iraq, shaped by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's brutal tactics in the mid-2000s. By 2014, under the command of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, they declared a caliphate and seized large parts of Iraq and Syria. Though they lost that territory by 2019 to US-backed forces, their ambitions didn't end there. Far from finished, the group adapted. They shifted from governing land to exploiting chaos in weak or war-torn regions. In 2024 alone, Islamic State affiliates carried out attacks in 22 countries, killing over 1,800 people. Their Khorasan branch, ISK, was behind the January bombing in Iran's Kerman province that killed 94 and the shocking March attack at a Moscow concert hall that left 130 dead. In Syria, they ramped up operations with 700 attacks in a single year, 3 times more than the year before. Elsewhere, offshoots like IS Sahel and ISWAP hold ground in Mali and Nigeria, enforcing strict rules and extorting local communities. With roughly 6,000 fighters in Afghanistan and another 3,000 across Iraq and Syria, they fund themselves through kidnappings, ransoms, and cryptocurrency, amassing an estimated $100 million annually. Despite global sanctions and arrests of senior planners, their ability to inspire violence worldwide remains. From chaotic war zones to peaceful city streets, the Islamic State or ISIS continues to mutate, recruit, and resurface. Number 2. The mafia that controls Naples streets. 2 high-ranking mob bosses were quietly living in Medellin when Colombian police kicked in the door and uncovered a drug pipeline that stretched from the jungles of South America to the crowded ports of Europe. The arrests didn't just expose a major drug trafficking ring, they pulled back the curtain on the Camorra, one of Italy's most elusive and powerful criminal networks. Rooted in the streets of Campania since the 17th century, the Camorra grew from small-time gangs into a loose federation of clans, each with its own turf around Naples. Unlike the Sicilian mafia's tight command structure, the Camorra thrives on decentralization. This allows them to adapt, survive internal feuds, and grow more elusive with every crackdown. Their business is as diverse as it is ruthless: drug trafficking, extortion, fraud, and toxic waste dumping. With around 7,000 members spread across 30 clans, including the powerful Contini and Casalesi families, the Camorra extends far beyond street-level crime. Their grip on local institutions runs deep. In 2019, the Contini clan infiltrated Naples' healthcare system, taking over hospital operations to launder money and control hiring. They've also turned parts of Campania into what locals call the Triangle of Death, a toxic dumping ground where cancer rates have soared. Despite international arrests and sanctions, including 2025 crackdowns on their Colombian partners, the Camorra's roots in Naples' struggling communities remain strong and dangerously hard to pull out. Number 1. The mafia that redefined global crime. A pre-dawn raid in Palermo sent shockwaves through Italy. 1,200 officers moving in on mafia strongholds, rounding up 181 suspects in a single coordinated strike. It wasn't just another bust. It was a clear message. Cosa Nostra isn't history. It's rebuilding. Despite decades of arrests, this organization remains deeply embedded in Sicily's fabric. Born during the 19th century upheaval that followed Italy's unification, Cosa Nostra rose from rural enforcers to a global criminal force. In the 1980s, it reached its peak with the infamous Pizza Connection, a pipeline that pumped 80% of hard drugs in the US straight from Sicily's ports. Their methods have changed, but not their ambition. Cosa Nostra's influence goes well beyond drugs. They've built a web of extortion schemes, rigged construction bids, and quietly embedded themselves in legitimate businesses. Since 2023, over 50 extortion cases have emerged in Palermo alone. One Naples case in 2024 exposed a $3 million crypto scam tied to their affiliates, proof they've adapted to modern finance as well. Their estimated 5,000 members include a rising wave of younger recruits. In fact, 40% of those arrested in 2025 were under 35. That, more than anything, shows this isn't a dying empire. It's a reshaping one. Even with the 2023 death of longtime fugitive Matteo Messina Denaro, the mafia's grip remains firm. They've rebranded their tactics, evolved their networks, and pushed deeper into global markets. This is Cosa Nostra, old blood, new strategies, same shadow. For more deep dives into the underworld's most dangerous empires, hit subscribe and stay one step ahead of the shadows. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.